Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people story. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation where I had to defend my own garage from an entitled neighbor, but here we are. This whole mess started about 6 months ago when I moved into my dream house in what seemed like a nice suburban neighborhood. The previous owner had converted the 3-car garage into an amazing workshop, which was actually one of the main reasons I bought the place. As someone who restores classic cars as a hobby, it was perfect. The first few months were great. I spent my weekends working on my latest project, a 1967 Mustang that needed a lot of TLC. My next-door neighbor, who I'll call Karen, because who else would it be, seemed friendly enough at first. She'd wave when she saw me outside and occasionally comment on how nice the car was looking, but things started getting weird about 2 months ago. Karen's son had just gotten his driver's license, and suddenly she became very interested in my garage. It started with casual comments like, "That's such a big space for just one person," and "It must be nice having all that extra room." I'd just smile and nod, not thinking much of it. Then came the first direct request. Karen caught me one Saturday morning as I was heading out to get coffee. "Hey, I was wondering if we could use your garage sometimes," she asked, trying to sound casual. "My son just got his first car and our garage is full of stuff. It would be so helpful if he could park in yours." I politely declined. "Sorry, but I use the garage for my restoration work. I need the space for my tools and projects." She didn't take the rejection well. Her friendly smile vanished instantly. "Well, that's pretty selfish. You don't need all that space just for your little hobby. My son actually needs it." I stood my ground. "It's not just a hobby. I've invested a lot in my workshop setup. I'm not comfortable having other people using it." Karen huffed and stormed off. I thought that would be the end of it, but oh boy, was I wrong. A week later, I came home from work to find Karen's son trying to peek through my garage windows. When I confronted him, he claimed his mom told him it was fine to check out the space. I made it clear it wasn't fine and told him to stay off my property. That's when the real harassment started. Karen began telling other neighbors that I was hoarding garage space and being unfair to her poor son who had nowhere to park. She'd make loud comments whenever she saw me outside about how some people are just too selfish to help their neighbors. But the real kicker came last Tuesday, at 5:07 a.m. Yes, I remember the exact time because who forgets being woken up at such an ungodly hour? My phone started ringing. It was Karen. "Hello?" I answered, still half asleep. "I need your garage keys right now," she demanded, not even bothering with a greeting. "What? It's 5 in the morning." "My son has an early morning practice, and it's supposed to rain. He needs somewhere to park his car. Just give me your keys, and I'll make sure he's careful." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Absolutely not. Do not call me again at this hour." "You don't understand," she screeched. "His car is brand new, and it can't get wet. You're being ridiculous about this whole thing. Just give me the keys." I hung up and tried to go back to sleep, but my phone kept ringing. Karen called 6 more times before I finally turned it off. When I checked later, she'd also sent about 20 text messages, ranging from demanding to pleading to threatening. But it gets better. When I left for work that morning, I found Karen actually standing in my driveway, blocking my car. "You can't just ignore me," she said, arms crossed. "This is a neighborhood issue now. Everyone agrees you're being unreasonable." I was already running late and definitely not in the mood for this. "Move away from my car or I'm calling the police." "Go ahead," she shouted. "I'll tell them how you're harassing us by hoarding garage space." I pulled out my phone and started dialing. Karen's bravado faltered a bit, but she still didn't move. At least not until I started describing her to the 911 operator. Then she practically ran back to her house. I thought that would be the end of it, but Karen had other plans. That evening I came home to find her son's car parked in my driveway right up against the garage door so I couldn't open it. Karen came marching over as soon as she saw me pull up. "Since you won't share the garage, we'll just have to use your driveway," she announced smugly. "It's technically part of the neighborhood easement, so you can't stop us." Wrong move, Karen. I took a deep breath and pulled out my phone. First, I took several photos of the car blocking my garage. Then I called the police non-emergency line. "Yes, I'd like to report a vehicle blocking access to my property," I said calmly. "The owner is refusing to move it." Karen's smug smile started to fade as she realized I wasn't backing down. "You're making a huge mistake," she warned. "My husband's cousin is a lawyer, and he says we have every right to park here." I ignored her and continued speaking with the dispatcher. Within 20 minutes, a patrol car pulled up. The officer, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s, listened to both sides of the story. Karen tried to spin some tale about neighborhood easements and shared driveways, but the officer wasn't having it. "Ma'am, this is a private driveway on private property," the officer explained. "If you don't move the vehicle immediately, it will be towed at your expense." Karen turned red. But his garage is empty most of the time. He's just being spiteful. The officer's expression hardened. That's irrelevant. Move the car now, or I'll call for a tow truck. Karen's son finally came out and moved the car, but not before Karen made a big show of checking for scratches and declaring that if she found any damage, she'd sue me. The officer stuck around long enough to make sure they cleared out completely. You might want to invest in some security cameras, the officer advised before leaving. People like this tend to escalate when they don't get their way. Smart advice, as it turned out. The very next day, I installed a comprehensive security system with cameras covering my driveway and garage from multiple angles. I also set up motion-activated lights and an alarm system. It wasn't cheap, but it turned out to be worth every penny. For a few days, things were quiet. Too quiet, really. I should have known Karen was just plotting her next move. That Saturday morning, I headed out to my garage to work on the Mustang. As soon as I opened the door, I knew something was wrong. Someone had clearly been messing with my tools. They weren't in their usual places, and some looked like they'd been moved around. I immediately checked the security footage. Sure enough, at 2 a.m., Karen's son had tried to pick the lock on my garage door. He didn't get in, thankfully, but he spent a good 20 minutes trying. The video quality was crystal clear. You could even see Karen standing lookout at the end of the driveway. This was no longer just a nuisance. This was attempted breaking and entering. I gathered all the security footage, along with screenshots of Karen's harassing text messages and records of her early morning calls, and went straight to the police station to file a formal complaint. The desk sergeant reviewed everything and called in a detective. Apparently, Karen and her son were already known to them. They'd had similar issues with neighbors at their previous address. "We've got enough here for charges," the detective told me. "But if you're willing to be patient, we might be able to catch them in the act. They'll probably try again." He was right. That night, I parked my car on the street instead of in the driveway. Around midnight, my security system sent an alert to my phone. I watched through the app as Karen and her son approached my garage again, this time with what looked like a set of lockpicks. I called the police, who were actually waiting nearby, expecting something like this. 3 patrol cars converged on my property with lights flashing. Karen and her son were caught red-handed, lock-picking tools and all. The look on Karen's face when the handcuffs went on was priceless. She kept screaming that she had every right to access my garage because she was a neighbor and her son needed it more than I did. Her son just looked terrified, as he should. Both were arrested for attempted breaking and entering, criminal trespassing, and possession of burglary tools. Karen got the additional charge of contributing to the delinquency of a minor, since her son was only 17. But here's where it gets really good. During the arrest, the police searched Karen's phone and found text messages to someone about selling my tools and equipment once they got into the garage. Turns out she had already arranged to fence my stuff. That bumped the charges up to attempted burglary with intent to sell stolen goods. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings. Karen's husband finally showed up. Apparently he worked out of state and had no idea what she'd been up to. He was horrified when he saw the evidence and immediately filed for divorce. Their house went up for sale within a month. Karen ended up taking a plea deal, 18 months in jail plus 5 years probation. Her son got juvenile detention and mandatory counseling. I also got a permanent restraining order against both of them. The best part, Karen's husband was so embarrassed by the whole thing that he offered to buy all new security equipment for my garage as part of their divorce settlement. I now have the most secure residential garage in the county, complete with biometric locks and military-grade security cameras. The Mustang restoration project got delayed a bit with all the drama, but I'm back at it now. Sometimes when I'm working in the garage late at night, I think about Karen sitting in her jail cell, probably still convinced she had every right to my property. It makes me smile every time. Last week, the new neighbors moved in. A quiet, retired couple who couldn't care less about my garage. They did ask if I could help them change their oil sometime, though. I said yes, because that's what good neighbors do. They ask nicely and respect boundaries. Edit, wow, this blew up. Thanks for all the support. A lot of people are asking for more details about what happened after, so here's a quick update. It's been about 6 months since everything went down, and there have been some pretty interesting developments. First off, Karen's not doing so well in jail. Her ex-husband, they're officially divorced now, told my neighbor that she's already been moved to a different facility after trying to pull the same entitled behavior with her cellmate. Apparently, she decided the bottom bunk was rightfully hers because she needed it more. That didn't go over well with the other inmates. The really crazy part? After Karen was arrested, 3 other families from her old neighborhood came forward with similar stories. Turns out this wasn't the first time she'd tried to take over someone else's garage. At their previous house, she'd actually managed to bully an elderly neighbor into letting her son use his garage, then refused to leave until the poor man had to sell his house and move away. The police are now investigating several other complaints against her. Her son is actually doing much better. His dad got him into therapy, and the kid wrote me a long letter apologizing for everything. He explained that his mom had always been like this, constantly demanding things from others and insisting she had a right to them. He admitted she'd been pressuring him to break into my garage for weeks, telling him it was fine because I was selfishly hoarding it. The counseling seems to be helping him understand how messed up that mindset is. The divorce revelations were pretty wild, too. Karen's ex-husband discovered she'd been running this same entitled scheme for years. She'd pick houses with nice garages or other amenities she wanted, move in next door, then start harassing the owners until they either gave in or moved away. She'd actually gotten them kicked out of 3 different neighborhoods before moving here. He had no idea because he worked out of state, and she always told him they were moving because the neighbors were difficult. Remember that lawyer cousin she kept threatening me with? Turns out he doesn't exist. She'd been making up legal threats for years, counting on people being too intimidated to check if they were real. When her ex's actual lawyer, a real one, looked into it, he found she'd been doing this for over a decade. The security system her ex bought me has been amazing. It's one of those high-end setups that actually got featured in a home security magazine. I've had several neighbors ask about getting similar systems installed. The company even asked if they could use my story in their advertising materials. I said yes. Might as well get some benefit from all this drama. The Mustang restoration is coming along great, by the way. Without constant harassment from Karen, I've been able to really focus on the project. I actually won Best in Show at a local car meet last month. Several people there had heard about the Garage Karen incident and wanted to hear the whole story firsthand. But here's the most satisfying part. Karen's old house finally sold, and you'll never guess who bought it. A retired mechanic and his wife. He's converting their garage into his own workshop, and we've become great friends. We actually work on projects together now. He's teaching me some amazing restoration techniques, and I'm helping him modernize his tool collection. It's what neighborly cooperation should actually look like. Last week, I got a letter from Karen in jail. She was demanding I write a letter to the parole board saying I'd overreacted and the charges should be dropped. She also wanted me to agree to let her son use my garage once she gets out, claiming it would show I'd learned my lesson about sharing. I didn't even bother responding, just forwarded it to her probation officer. The detective who helped catch her called yesterday with an interesting update. They've linked Karen to at least 7 other cases of harassment and attempted property theft in 3 different states. Apparently, this was her thing, moving into nice neighborhoods and trying to bully her way into using other people's property. She's now facing additional charges, which means she'll likely be in jail quite a bit longer than her original sentence. Her ex-husband is selling their old house and moving back to his hometown. Before he left, he actually helped me install some additional lighting in my workshop as a final apology for his ex-wife's behavior. He's a decent guy who just got caught up with a crazy person. He's already started dating again and seems much happier. The neighborhood has completely changed since Karen left. People are friendlier, more relaxed. We even started a monthly car enthusiast meetup in my driveway. Several neighbors have gotten into car restoration as a hobby, and we all help each other out. It's become this really positive community thing. Oh, and remember those lock-picking tools they caught Karen's son with? The police investigation revealed she'd bought them off Amazon using her ex-husband's credit card. She'd actually ordered a whole burglary kit complete with Slim Jims and bump keys. Her ex was able to use those credit card records in the divorce proceedings to show how long she'd been planning this. The karma train wasn't done, though. Last month, Karen's sister tried to move into the neighborhood, apparently to defend her sister's reputation. She put an offer in on a house down the street, but once the HOA board heard the last name, they did some digging. Turned out she had a similar history of harassing neighbors at her old place. They rejected her application immediately. I've since installed a coffee machine and mini fridge in my garage workshop. It's become something of a neighborhood hangout spot on weekends. People stop by to chat, check out the Mustang's progress, and share their own project ideas. It's exactly the kind of friendly community space I'd always wanted, and all it took was one entitled Karen's arrest to make it happen, so I guess there's a silver lining to every cloud. Even one as dark and ridiculous as Karen. My garage is more secure than Fort Knox. I've made great friends with my neighbors, and I've got some amazing stories to tell at car shows. Plus, I hear the prison doesn't have a garage at all. Karma's funny like that. Final edit. Holy cow! More platinum? Thanks, everyone! Since people keep asking, yes, I'll post pictures of the Mustang when it's done. And no, Karen still hasn't learned her lesson. Her latest letter from jail complained that the prison garage, aka the maintenance shed, should be made available to inmates for personal vehicle storage. Some people never change. The next one is a pro-revenge story. For context, it was her cousin-in-law. Let's start this story by saying this happened 12 years ago. I'm now happily married with 3 children and regret absolutely nothing. I was with my new ex for 3 years. I had noticed that she was being extremely controlling. I was expected to give every little detail of my day and tell her my schedule in advance, and if I deviated from that, she would be very upset. She chalked it up to just bad feelings she was having and shrugged it off as her paranoia for past relationships of infidelity. I had never once cheated or strayed, and I never gave her a reason to act like this. It felt unbecoming of my fiancé to act in such a way. Now this is where it gets juicy. After she had asked for my schedule to make plans, as mine tends to be more hectic than hers, I noticed she was texting someone. In my line of work, if I put in more than 40 hours, I have the ability to take time off at will as long as the work is completed at a later date. I was very good friends with a brother and still am. We laugh about this to this day, and he actively reminds her of it. I messaged him stating I wanted to do something special for her a little bit earlier than our anniversary to make sure it was a special surprise. They both worked in the same fabrication facility. He was a fabricator and she a shipping manager. He was kind enough to let me know her schedule. That's where the discrepancy falls into place. Without my knowledge, she was foregoing overtime. She worked 12-hour shifts Monday through Friday, with the exception of Wednesday, when she would only work half a day. She had been taking Wednesdays off right around the time that she started getting extremely controlling. Lucky for me, I had stacked several days of leisure time up, so taking a Wednesday off for me was not an issue. A few days go by and Wednesday's here. I put on my work gear and leave for work. I was expecting her to leave as our apartment complex had 2 exits on the same road I could see directly across from a shopping center, so I parked my car near the back and waited. After about an hour, I notice a very specific red Mustang with a specific decal on the back window. It was her cousin by marriage. I had also done my due diligence to take an old laptop, which we kept on our desk in an office area with a full view of the living room, bedroom door, and bathroom plus the kitchen. I had set it up for remote access and had it alert me when the webcam noticed movement. Giving her the benefit of the doubt, I thought he may be dropping something off or coming over to assist her with something as her family sometimes does. Sure enough, a message came through, so I remote into my laptop. He walks through the door without skipping a beat. She unbuttons his shirt and begins kissing him. I created a URL link for the live stream, and as she was preoccupied, we had a family group text and a friend group text. They were both part of it, but at the current time, they were currently indisposed and didn't look at their phones. They didn't even wait. They could have gone to the bedroom, but no, they decided to get freaky deaky right there on the couch. I sent the link off to the friend group chat and the family group chat. Within minutes, I'm getting calls non-stop from friends and family alike. There was no turning back. She was getting blown up, but she was ignoring her phone. Not until the 4th or 5th call came through did they decide to take a break. For context, the state I live in allows recording of personal property regardless of occupancy. I was the only one on the lease. She wasn't allowed to be on the lease because of poor credit. The call she had picked up was from her cousin's mother, who she was banging. She answers the phone on speaker, and I kid you not, the first words out of his mother's mouth were, "Stop fucking my son." They both became rigid, and she began to stutter over her words, saying, "What are you talking about?" etc. The mother then divulged that there was a live feed of them sent out by me to her family. She grabbed every pillow off the couch and covered herself up. The cousin staggered off, trying to put on his pants and shoes just to trip himself up and bang his head off of my coffee table, leaving it with a divot. By this time, I had made my way to the front of the apartment complex. I was there to greet the adulterer as he came out of the front exit. He froze and began to cry, apologizing profusely. I'm not going to lie, what happened afterwards wasn't my best moment, and I nearly got into legal trouble if it weren't for the fact that he was trespassing on private property. Let's just say I had a cast for 6 weeks and he wasn't in any family photos for months. I went up to the apartment, where she was now fully clothed and crying inconsolably. I asked her if it was snot or cum on her face. Then I told her not to answer because it didn't matter anyway. I gave her 1 hour to remove all her belongings, as again, everything in the apartment was mine except for clothes, some makeup, and a few kitchen utensils. Her mother would not let her move in, as she was just filled with embarrassment. Same for her brothers, and the cousin's mother kicked her son out. Rumors spread around our town very quickly, and for a lack of better words, she was untouchable. The next one is a malicious compliances story. This is a doozy that happened to me at my old job, a server at a breakfast place, where I fully acknowledge that there's no need for an AITA, because I ATA, and I know it. I was having a particularly overwhelming shift, and about 3 hours into a 6-hour shift, 2 people came in that were particularly known for their being divorced and completely loathing one another quite openly to the servers and staff, and were overall very loud and rude to guests and staff alike. Every other weekend they would come in to go over paperwork and divorce things, and the server who would get them always got sympathy from the rest of us. I had the pleasure of serving these lovely people a few times, and all of the times were so insanely different in terms of weirdness, but let's just get into this one. They come in, and it ends up being my turn in the rotation. Yikes, but I thought me and the guy were chill because the last time I served them I told him I liked his dinosaur shirt, and his ex-wife made fun of him for it, and I told her I thought it was a cool shirt, and he and I high-fived, and it was the most invigorating experience of my life. I come up to them and ask what I can get started for their drinks, and I can tell it's going to be a tense experience already. They were both very snappy and rude, and I was doing my best to just stay friendly. Fast forward, and I'm asking for their orders eventually, and the guy orders 4 eggs. I explain to him we double our yolks. If you order 4 eggs, you will receive 8 total eggs. He tells me no, he wants 4 eggs. So I tell him, okay, so that is going to show up as 2 eggs in our system and on your respite. He tells me no, he wants 4 eggs. At this point, I don't know what to tell him, but I try one more time. I tell him, yes, you will receive 4 eggs on your plate, but it will say 2 on the respite. He says, no, I don't want to pay for 2, I want to pay for 4. I'm done. ATP, I'm more confused than he is. I tell him okay, and I write it down on my order sheet. I put in the order, manually because we do not have a button for 4 eggs because we double our eggs. The head cook calls me over. He says, 4? I say, that's what the customer ordered. He says, okay. And he makes the most beautiful over-easy sheet of 8 eggs with a side of bacon. It comes out and I serve it to him. He looks at me and says, this isn't what I ordered. I say, yes, it is. And he says, fine, I'll take it. I got yelled at for it at the end of my shift, but it was so worth the look on his face when I served it to him, and the laughs it got from my coworkers who told me they wished it was them to serve it to him. One of my favorite memories from working at that place. I have a picture of the 8-egg beauty, but I can't post it here. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.